Well, all right, everyone, welcome. It's such a beautiful day out there. I think lots of folks are probably hoping to catch the recording of our Science Cafe, but that's right, they will miss the live and in-person version. So we're thrilled to have everyone with us this evening as we kind of take a slightly different tack to our Science Cafe topics this evening. And we are talking with John and Hayley Rocco, who we are thrilled to have with us. They are probably two of the most passionate advocates for just preserving the natural world and biodiversity in the natural world that we've had the pleasure of working with. And so it's been a really fun collaboration. And so tonight, what we hope to do is tell you a little bit about their background, their work, kind of what their mission is, and then talk a bit about a unique collaboration that sort of evolved and came about as they were looking to tell a story about how we can help or have an impact in preserving the natural world. So they have written a series of books that they're going to tell you a bit about. One of them featuring our favorite research organism. Don't tell all the zebrafish and C. elegans researchers out there that we have a slight preference. Pryog's smiling from ear to ear back there because he knows he won the cutest organism that we study. But they are doing a book on the axolotl. So if any of you are familiar with that organism and its special properties, we're going to tell you a little bit more about that tonight, about that organism, and about kind of how Hayley and John came to know a little more about the axolotl, how they worked with two of our scientists to kind of learn some of those fun facts that you've included in the book. And they're going to share some excerpts and actually read the book to us, I think, this evening. So you're in for a treat. And then we're going to have a little conversation around science communication. That's certainly something that we are passionate about here. How do you take relatively complex concepts and sort of distill them down? And I think children are a wonderful audience for your ability to be able to do that in a way that is meaningful. And so I'm thrilled to have you both with us. And I know our audience is excited to hear what you have to say. We're going to turn that over to the two of you and tell us more about what you're up to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Working?
Yes.
Aha, there we go.
So, my name is John. This is Hayley.
Hello.
I write and illustrate children's books. I've been doing it for about 20 years. Hayley started writing after leaving a career in children's publishing. And now together as husband and wife, we make books together. So she writes them, I illustrate them, and behind the scenes, we kind of come up with what we're going to work on next.
Which leads us to our book, Wild Places, which is all about, I don't know if you know him, David Attenborough. And this book, we really wanted to do a book about how our world is changing and how do we break that down for young readers and just show them how much the world has changed within one man's lifetime, and who better to use as an example than David Attenborough, who is now 98 years old, and he has spent over 7 decades explaining and taking us into the natural world. And so John and I decided, let's do a book about David Attenborough for young readers. And so that's what we did. We created Wild Places.
And so the book opens and talks about the earth as a whole, and we start there. So, just to use Hayley's words and David Attenborough's voice, starts out, this is our planet. And on our planet, there are 8.7 million types of animals. One of those types is humans. And one of those humans is a man named David. And we get into graphically showing that when he was born, 2/3 of the planet was wild. Today, less than 1/3 of it is wild. We have successfully concreted or agged most of the land on this planet, and the planet's suffering because of it. And he realized that along the way. So we talk about his childhood.
We introduce you to his childhood, the inspiration behind his love for nature. Okay, I guess we went back. And you learn how the world has changed, how it's being diminished, how wildlife is not only disappearing, but the climate's changing. And it's not just the wildlife that we're losing, we're going to lose ourselves too, through our own impact. And how do we tell that story in a way that's not too scary? And I hope we did that with this book. But David at the end offers solutions on how we can help and how we can bring back the wild places. And we offer problems, solutions at the very end of the book. And you can go to our website, meetthewildthings.com, where you can garner resources in order to access ways to help and for young readers.
A lot of these problems are not necessarily something that a child can take on. Like, how does a child take on the idea of overfishing, right? They can't, there's nothing they can do about that. But what they can do is write to their local senators, their local congresspeople, and let them know. Recently, Hayley went to Capitol Hill to speak on behalf of Defenders of Wildlife to help ensure.
Well, to advocate for the Endangered Species Act, which has over 76 and up, I think it's rising, attacks on it in Congress right now. So Defenders of Wildlife brings in different advocates to speak for endangered species, kind of showing the constituents to the Congress people who are saying, this is the reason why animals matter. They matter as a children's book author to our next generation, right? And so that's the opportunity I had recently to bring a voice to the animals and advocate for them and for children in that way.
Yeah, and it's something as simple as a letter saying, my name is Bill, I'm 5-6 years old, and my favorite animal is, whatever that
A cheetah.
animal is. And, it's important for me that we save this animal. And, so there's a process where we can get those letters to the right people. In fact, we made up a worksheet for Senator Collins here in Maine, that kids can, draw their favorite animal and say why they care about it. And those kinds of things actually have impact and mean something to these people. So, that's part of what you can do through our website. There's a template for children to actually
Reach out
to their senators
through their class or on their own.
So most recently, we've been working on this book series. Do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's called Meet the Wild Things. Our first two books just came out on June 25th, and that is Hello, I'm a Sloth and Hello, I'm a Pangolin. These books are all about endangered species, but the animals have a direct conversation with the readers themselves. So they're telling the reader fun facts about themselves, why they matter to either our planet, to science, just in general, what part they play, and why they're endangered and what people are doing to help and how they can help too. But we'll be reading Hello, I'm an Axolotl for you guys
Yeah.
in a little bit, but first we'll tell you a little bit about our research.
Yeah, for each animal, it's important for us to get to, I mean, you can garner a lot of information from reading books and finding stuff on the internet, but it's important for us to actually meet and talk to the people who are actually working with those animals. One of our trips down to Costa Rica, we were fortunate enough to find sloths in the wild that we could study. And not only that, but we connected with a woman named
Dr. Rebecca Cliff.
Dr. Rebecca Cliff at the Sloth Conservation Foundation. And she works with sloths and a very young woman, like in her late 30s, who's considered the foremost expert in sloths in the world. Mainly because she said, this is going to be my life and I'm going to study these animals. And so we were able to contact her and that's how we also get the information in our books vetted. We want to make sure whatever information we're giving out there is the right information.
And
at the time.
most current, because we've learned through the research that so much is changing. There's so much to learn about animals. Not everything is known. And that's also part of the exciting part that we want to share with kids. Like you can be a Dr. Rebecca Cliff, you know.
And misinformation can spread like wildfire. I mean, you had this experience on sloth.
Correct. So when I was researching sloth, there's an amazing fact that we had in the manuscript originally about how sloths can hold up their breath up to 30 minutes. When we underwater.
Yeah.
When we asked Dr. Rebecca Cliff about that fact, now this has been published in some of the most reliable sources out there, like National Geographic and so forth, and Smithsonian. I said, is this a true fact? Because we'd love to include it in the book. And she said, well, this is how that fact came about. A scientist was testing the sloth on how it can actually, like how long it can hold its breath.
It held it underwater until it died.
Yeah. So.
And that took 30 minutes. And that's how that fact got out there.
Right. So it's not a natural.
Not a fact we want to share.
Because it's not something the sloth would naturally be doing. It doesn't go dive under and go swimming. So while it's a true fact, it's not a fact that you would use in a story about the lifestyle of a sloth, because they actually naturally float based on what they eat, which is why they're such good swimmers. So that was a fascinating, an eye-opening fact that really, solidified our need for access to our experts. And then I had the unique opportunity to meet a pangolin in the wild. And that informed so much of the book. And that was how I was introduced to Wild Tomorrow, which I'm now an ambassador for, as well as John. And we get to go to South Africa and
we're going to talk more about that.
We're going to talk more about that in a second.
And finally, we get to MDIBL. When we were starting the research on our book Axolotl, one of the facts that we uncovered was, the regeneration. And how amazing is this? And we also discovered, that, there's a lab and it's up in Maine and they're like the foremost researchers on axolotls. We got to go check this out. And so we called.
And maybe we'll get to meet them.
Yeah. And
sure
we
enough.
reached out to Dr. Marwala and
Dr. Godwin.
Dr. Godwin, who's on the Zoom. Hello,
Yeah.
Dr. Godwin. And we were able to come up here and And there's my dad next to him. Hello, Dad.
Oh.
Also a scientist. And we were able to come up here for 2 lovely days and meet axolotls and meet the researchers who were doing this incredible science.
Groundbreaking science.
And that really helped inform a lot of our book. And you also reached out to a conservationist scientist in Mexico City.
Mexico City, where the axolotl naturally is indigenous to, and Dr. Luis Zambrano, and he
Family order is and how they support each other through.
the females support the other females, youngsters, while they go off and feed, just like elephants do, and so it's
There's,
groundbreaking. And
so it's exciting to know there's still stuff to discover, right?
there's a lot to discover.
So with that, we would like to read to you as this very second audience we've ever read this book to. This morning it was to a bunch of kids at the library. Hello, I'm an axolotl. Hello, I am an axolotl, and I am amazing. Say it with me, axolotl. It means water monster. I am named after Zalotl, the Aztec god of fire and lightning. Pretty neat, huh? I may look a lot like my cousins, the salamanders, but unlike them, I never actually leave the water. And in a way, I never really grow up. I never lose my youthful glow.
I breathe through my amazing and gorgeous gills. I can even absorb oxygen through my skin.
But I also have lungs and I can surface and breathe air. How many ways can you breathe?
Axolotls in captivity are all sorts of colors. In the wild, we are mostly gray or brown, but we all sparkle. That's because we have special cells in our skin that reflect light like glitter. Amazing, right? Female axolotls can lay up to 1,000 eggs at a time. 2 weeks later, these little hatchlings wiggle out of their jelly-like homes and become water monsters, like me.
When they are first born, they are usually so hungry that they sometimes snack on each other. Some of us don't really grow out of it. Sorry.
But don't worry, it's okay because we axolotls have superpowers. You heard me right. We can regrow lost limbs, tails, even parts of our hearts and brains.
Ta-da! How many superheroes do you know that can do that? As I said, I am amazing.
It's this superpower that has human scientists so interested in us. We are masters at growing back parts of ourselves without scarring.
They want to figure out how we do it so they can improve how humans heal in the future. Do you have any superpowers? You might recognize a couple of those.
There are about 1 million axolotls all over the world living in tanks and aquariums. But in the wild, there are only a few of us left in a lake and some canals outside Mexico City.
I haven't been able to do a head count, but scientists believe it's anywhere from 50 to 500.
Unfortunately, our habitat keeps getting smaller with all the humans who are now living around here.
And more humans means more pollution, which makes our water dirty and unhealthy for us, and for people too. Also, humans have introduced some non-native fish like the Asiatic carp and tilapia to our waters for fishing. Apparently, their superpower is to just gobble us up. But with the help of some caring conservationists, farmers, and scientists, we may be able to recover.
They're reintroducing floating garden islands called chinampas, which are an ancient Aztec farming method. They make great hiding spots, and they help filter out pollutants from the water, making it safer not only for my family, but for human families as well. Conservationists are also teaching people about me, so I've become pretty popular with locals. And the more popular I become, the more people want to help me survive in the wild. You can find me in video games, and there are toys that look just like me.
I'm even featured on the Mexican 50 peso bill, you know, like a president or something. Okay, I'm headed up the canal. Until I see you next time, stay amazing, my friend. And in the back, there's lots more information about axolotls.
More fun facts, and we also offer solutions on how kids can get involved and help out. And if you go to our website, you can learn more about different organizations who are helping and how you can connect with them.
So going back to Wild Tomorrow for a second, this organization that we're ambassadors for, what they do, which is fascinating, is they are actively rewilding ag land that has been pretty much decimated. And they're working specifically in the area of KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, which is one of the most biodiverse hotspots in the world. And they are buying up land that was used for farming that sits in between giant national parks and game reserves and creating corridors for animals and rewilding that land. So they're reintroducing animal species to that land. They're removing non-native plants from that land. And it's incredible what they've been able to accomplish, this organization, in just a short time period. If you saw what the land looked like when they bought it and what it looks like now, you would be amazed. And it's teeming with giraffes and hippos and all kinds of zebra and wildebeest. And it's just incredible how the land came back. And it can do that. You know, they proved it. 15 women in this organization that are from local
Communities,
tribes, communities surrounding the area, were all hired full-time, and they work on removing non-native plants and opening up, like when there was so much growth around rivers that it got so bound up that crocodiles could no longer breed because they needed to make nests on the banks, and they couldn't do that. And they removed all that, and now there's crocodiles creating babies galore along the banks, and you know, it's just amazing to watch. And so Hayley had gone out there to do some conservation work with them and to meet the pangolin, and when she came back, she expressed what an incredible opportunity and what an incredible experience she had.
I was so inspired just being there the entire time, witnessing the biodiversity. It was just everywhere, from the termites and the dung beetles to seeing the elephants and the lions, and how small we are as humans in the grand scheme of things, in the best way. If we, if we really look at the circle of life. which they refer to a lot.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, I think there's a documentary about this, but the termite, for instance, we don't think much about them. They make these termite mounds all over South Africa. But if it wasn't for the termite, all the animals would die. And I'll tell you why. The termites bring up the minerals from the soil to make their mounds. And when they leave a termite mound, the elephants will knock it down and actually eat those minerals that they need very much to help them digest the plant food that they eat. When they knock those termite mounds down, they're digging around, they're creating a well. Now, when it rains, that well fills with water, and that well will capture the rainwater. And because of all the mineral deposits at the bottom of it, it doesn't dry out as quickly as all the other rainwater that just runs off and is gone. Then they come back to that small little water hole and they make it bigger and bigger and bigger. And all of their trails from walking to that water hole create rivers that feed that water hole. And then that water hole can be around for 100 years. And all the animals survive on that water. So you see how the smallest thing can save everything. And so it's important when looking at
We don't want to have any missing links.
the biodiversity, it's important that every little piece is there to make it work. So that's one of the incredible things we've learned working with Wild Tomorrow. And so we created this group called Children's Book Creators for Conservation, because we wanted to bring other children's book authors to this incredible place to have this experience. And so
And hopefully inspire more stories, right?
so last October, we went with 7 other award-winning children's book authors and illustrators. And we spent 2 weeks doing conservation work with Wild Tomorrow, which involved everything from banding birds and recording information about what birds were migrating through the area to
Rhino horn trimming, which is a preventative tool that they use on small private game reserves to protect rhinos from poaching. There's a huge poaching crisis in South Africa. And unfortunately, in this lifetime, it's not looking great that these animals will survive. So they're taking extreme measures to save these animals, and that's one of them. But the good thing is they don't need their horns, it turns out. So
it's like trimming a fingernail.
It's-
It actually grows back after a couple of years. So they have to continually keep this process up, and it doesn't seem to affect the rhinos. In fact, they found that rhinos who've had their horns trimmed actually mate more often. So that's a good thing.
maybe less injuries, I don't know.
Yeah. So yeah, it's an interesting process, and these conservationists are almost like at war with the poaching crisis and all the other things that they have to deal with. In South Africa, all the animals are in game reserves. So there's not a lot of human-animal conflict happening there, but there's also the issue of gene pool. And so a lot of what conservationists are doing are constantly trading animals and moving animals from one location to another to get
To ensure diversity.
Yeah, so we're going back in September of 2025 with 7 more children's book authors. But some of these children's book authors that went with us in October of last year already have books under contract that are about conservation and things happening. In fact, Candy Fleming at the top, who's a very well-known children's book author, is doing a book on
A young adult book.
a young adult novel on the forensics of poaching, which is really fascinating. And she just wrote a book about the Enigma girls, And she also had a great book come out 2 years ago about the rise and fall of Charles Lindbergh, which I highly recommend. Yeah, if you know much about him. So I think that
Fantastic.
concludes what we are going to blab about.
Yeah. Now we're going to blab some more. We're going to do a little conversation. So I really hope that all of you have some questions for John and Hayley, and those of you who are joining us online, feel free to take yourselves, put your cameras on, and if you want to ask a question, just use the raise hand feature, and we'd love to include you in this conversation. So I want to just kind of take you back to earlier today when you mentioned that we were the second audience that you had to share this book with. And I want you to tell us a little bit about what you did this morning in partnership with Island Readers and Writers. Can you just give us a glimpse at what that was like?
Yeah, so we were at the library,
Northeast Harbor Library?
thank you, the Northeast Harbor Library. And we had a bunch of families come in and children, and we were able to share with them a couple of our books and talk with them about what we do. And it's always fun to interact with the kids, and especially when you have a book that's not quite done yet. So I mean, our part is done, but it's still like at the publishers, at the printers, not quite fully formed like
one of
these are.
these.
But that's how they start out. We start with sketches, and then we get to the point where we actually have some paintings. So yeah.
What was the response to your?
Oh,
reading
it was
this morning?
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah,
Did you get some good
kids
questions?
love axolotls. I don't know
I
how
love
many of you know
animals.
this.
Yeah.
Kids love animals, but they have a special affinity for axolotls because I think part of it is because of Minecraft, actually. You were saying they didn't even know that axolotls were a real thing. They just thought it was that blocky kind of cool looking thing that floated around in Minecraft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like their world collided when they came here and saw real live axolotls for the first time. It was fun. It was fun. So tell us, you were mentioning, John, a little bit about the process of what it's like to create a book like this. And for those of us who don't live in that world, I'm just curious, what is that like? I mean, number one, in this series, I'm just curious, how do you choose which animal you want? There are a lot of animals that are on this endangered species list.
Yeah, we have a long list of
We do have a long list
of animals we want to do, and sometimes we'll run them by the publisher, and but it's mainly between us figuring it out. And she'll fall in love with something, and I'll be like, I can't draw that. Like, oh my gosh, that's going to be so hard to like bring that character to life. And so I'm like, stay away from that.
It's very much a collaboration. If I'm really excited about an animal, and John has to be excited about drawing and being excited
Like a snow leopard in the snow. I mean,
I could draw that.
Yeah. It's quick.
Eyes.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, because we're playing around with, well, what are we going to do next? Right now we're working on, we just finished Hello, I'm a Toucan. And toucans are pretty fascinating animals. They have huge bills, and scientists and engineers are studying them because they have incredible strength and lightness. Inside their bills is this hollow bone, like it's like foam. If you solidified foam structure inside their bill, which is then coated with keratin or fingernails, and it makes it super strong and super lightweight. So there are engineers that are looking into the possibilities of making like car panels the same way, and airplane parts the same way as the toucan. And we're doing a book on the pygmy Sloloris,
which is the only venomous primate that we know of on our Earth, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, when they get scared, do you know what the loris looks like? It has giant eyes. They're nocturnal animals. They have huge
But they're very
eyes, but they're tiny little primates,
Yeah.
little monkeys. And if they get scared, they raise their arms and they can lick this gland underneath their arms, and when it mixes with the saliva in their mouth, it
They
becomes
put it on their
toxic.
teeth and then they bite, and it's kind of like a
Defense mechanism.
flesh-eating bacteria almost that they can.
But the
create
problem,
tissue.
here's the problem. The problem is they're so darn cute that people make YouTube videos of, these things as pets, and they're tickling it. And so it's got its arms up and it looks really cute. Well, it's terrifying.
It's actually a form of
And
torture.
in order to make them a pet, they actually, without anesthesia, take a nail clipper and take out their teeth. It's horrible.
And unfortunately, they don't survive this procedure a lot of the time.
So one of the things that we try to do in these books about either toucans or sloths is these animals are not pets. They should not be pets. And it's important to kind of get that information across to young people, because all they're going to see is that YouTube video of that super cute
Mhm.
slow loris who's like, and it's, I'll admit it, it's adorable, but that animal is terrified. So, this is kind of what we're trying to do is, autocorrect some of this thinking around what animals should be. And
Mhm.
most of them should be in the wild and stay in the wild.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, when we're researching certain things, you go down rabbit holes and you find other animals or other avenues of research that can be done. And when I was researching for wild places, that's how I discovered that the penguin is the most trafficked animal on Earth. And I didn't know that. And I thought, I don't think a lot of people know that.
That's
and-
what kicked off the whole series.
And that's what really kicked off the whole series, was this poor mammal, which is absolutely adorable. But it's the only scaled mammal on Earth. It's quickly going to go extinct at this rate, because it's being poached for its scales for traditional medicinal uses.
And they keep ant and termite populations in check. So if we lose all our pangolins, we're going to have to find another way to deal with that. And of course, that'll probably be poison. And then it's a slippery slope.
So yeah, so it's really interesting how it's just, the sloth was a shoo-in because I love sloth. So that was it's just like, well, we have to do the sloth.
And the quokka,
The
I don't know
quokka,
if you've ever seen a quokka.
but they
This is
have,
an animal that just lives on an island, mostly just on a small little island off of Australia. But it is adorably cute.
and it became popular because of selfies with celebrities. So celebrities were going to this island and they were taking pictures with this adorable creature. Now,
Their face is built so that they look like, a
that's just
Disney
how
character.
their faces naturally, right?
He might not be happy.
But they only live on this island. There's a few of them left in Western Australia, but most of them were eradicated because the settlers that moved in brought foxes with them
To hunt.
for game, for sport. But of course, the foxes saw these poor little creatures that had no defense mechanism.
Right.
And kind of wiped them out. So it's really fascinating. I mean, we learn so much as we do research about.
And we're
these
always looking
animals.
for animals that have kind of an interesting characteristic,
Mhm.
something that has a hook.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, okay, now why is this animal in trouble?
Mhm.
And when we first started, we were like, should we only do endangered animals? Doesn't that limit us? And we realized, no, it doesn't, because almost all of them are endangered at this point,
Right.
Sadly.
Yeah, exactly. How about questions from the audience? Anything that you would like to ask John and Hayley? Yeah.
Yes.
All my love life. I'm a librarian. I specialized in children's picture books when I was in grad school. My husband is certainly a conservation lover. My daughter-in-law is an artist. Thank you, though. My point is, when I work with undergraduates, this is the way, books like yours are the way that I chose to introduce them to concepts that they were unfamiliar with. nature or physics or something like that. So you reach a lot of audiences with your books. So thank you for your work.
Oh, thank you so much.
My
Great.
pleasure.
Great. I
Honored
look forward
to-
to supporting the books.
Well, I've got a follow-up question. Obviously, children and the receptiveness of children, the curiosity of children, the natural kindness of children is the, that's the future.
Mhm.
But what do we do about folks like us who are cynical, selfish, lazy, who impact adults who can do something now through legislative processes and all the other things that you guys talk about? How do we, convince enough people that it's not just for the animals, it's for us?
Right.
Right.
So our method, because this is what we do, we make books, right? We make
Storytelling.
books for children.
Mhm.
Children come home and tell their parents, children are the ones that say, oh no, dad, you gotta recycle that. Or like, we gotta save, no, you can't put that outside, the squirrels will eat it, and they can't have that, they can't eat that. These children actually make an impact, and as adults, sometimes we listen to children, whether we want to or not.
But there's also small things, that we can all do, and it's planting non-native or planting native plants in your garden to attract the pollinators, to create your own little biodiverse hotspot in your backyard. And that might sound small, but it's not. It makes a huge impact.
We did, there's this thing called No Mow May.
Mhm.
Have you heard of it? Okay, so we did it. We have about 3 acres. Most of it's woods, but we have maybe an acre of lawn. And we just let it go. And oh my gosh, for the first time since we've lived there, and we've lived
It's
there for
6
6 years, suddenly fireflies at dusk,
I said,
rabbits
John,
running
there's
all over the yard.
fireflies.
Finally we got to the point where we have to mow, but we decided to cordon off about half of it and just let it go wild. And now there's a bunch of rabbits living in there, and it's beautiful to watch. We can look out our upstairs window and see Mama Rabbit and the baby rabbits and Papa Rabbit running around, and it's great. So to see how quickly things changed just because we decided not to mow our lawn for a month.
And nature will bounce back. And I think that's a big message.
I don't think
With-
we answered your question completely. The other answer that you probably don't want to hear is it's too late for you. So we
Oh,
focused
stop.
on the children.
He's joking.
Take a walk, and you see a beer bottle, pick it up and take it home. I mean, it doesn't have to be monumental, but those little things add up over time, and they do make a difference.
But for us, or at least for me, I think going on this trip with Wild Tomorrow, that was the first time I felt like I had some impact. And it was so inspiring. I'm getting emotional thinking of it because it was such a roller coaster of emotions, feeling and seeing and witnessing how community working with, this very small organization started by a husband and wife team. They created so much since 2019, and how many acres have they
3,200
expanded
acres,
upon?
they've rewilded at this point.
And to witness the action that's happening, it is something truly inspiring that I hope and I wish everyone could experience, because it would change how we all think. And so that's our hope with Children's Book Creators for Conservation, is to bring some of those children's book authors to then share those stories too, right? And hopefully get more excitement about the work that is being done. And it's not just in South Africa. It's, there's organizations all over the world who are trying and working. It's not in the news as much as it should be. I mean, the fact that rhinos who have been around for 50 million years are going extinct is not top of mind. It's kind of terrifying,
So Hayley and John have put together a video sort of, of this experience, right? This is the right way. So we're going to send you all a link in our email follow-up so that you can experience that for yourselves. And I think Sharon may have put it in the chat for those of you who are joining us remotely. But I do encourage all of you to take a look at that, because as you can see, it was a very moving experience. So something that we definitely want to share. Rachel.
This has been wonderful to me, and you're also speaking my language. I was a first grade teacher for many years. And one of the books the kids really attached to was the Great K-pop Tree, which is a they're having cut down a tree in the endangered forest, and all the animals come and talk to the person who's fallen asleep, telling them why it's so important to not cut down the tree. And one of the things that happened as a teacher is that the kids were so taken by that. Because when they're kids, they believe that animals can talk and that they, they're so much more connected. And one of the problems I had as a teacher is that the kids would say, what kind of animal is that? And we'd have to go look for the research to try, but it would be, grown up in research or encyclopedias, that kind of thing. So the idea that you could have a book like that with so many animals and have a companion of all your books of the animals talking to them. What made you decide to use that mechanism of the animals talking directly? Because I think it's so effective and wonderful to hear. Jane Goodall.
Actually, so she was a hero of mine. My grandfather gave us National Geographic as a subscription growing up. And anytime Jane Goodall was in it, I was, I want to be her. But we actually have a signed print by John's old teacher.
My illustration teacher.
His illustration teacher. And he creates these beautiful portraits. And there's one that we have of Jane Goodall in our bedroom that I look at every day. And the quote that goes along with her portrait is, the least I can do is speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. And that's really, I'm going to get emotional. For me, it's a dream come true to hopefully have children have a direct relationship, the animal that they're meeting, to get them to care. And if you care about something, they'll take care of it. And that's kind of the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She said it best.
Well, I think there are so many takeaway messages, for us here at MDIBL as we think about, how to communicate science in a way that people will care. Because sometimes science can be pretty complex, and sometimes it's hard to distill it down into those key concepts that, as a non-scientist myself, it's easy to sort of glaze over when you hear a lot of, detail and facts, and miss those key important pieces that you were talking about, Hayley, because I think that's something that, is really part of our mission here, is how do we get people to care? Because there are so many things that we need to care about these days. Dr. Haller, do you have a question?
You are making these wonderful books. Do you have a regular forum where you meet with your audience, or is this in schools, or how do you communicate with your audience besides providing?
So in the children's movement, we regularly visit schools all over the country.
Which is very rewarding.
Yeah.
Because you get the interaction directly with the children.
So we go to different schools, and as much as we can, a lot of times is spent in the studio making the books. During COVID, it was different, very different, but it's actually, in a way, it was cool because we were actually able to interact with a lot more people. Normally, sometimes when you go on a book tour and you'll go to a bookstore somewhere and 10 or 12 people show up and you'll be like, yes, 10 or 12 people came. That's just how it is. And
But the school visits are.
during COVID, it was great because the bookstore could set up a big Zoom call and people could come in from all over. So you'd get 1,200 people showing up at your bookstore event, which was unheard of before then. So you could reach a lot more people. But yeah, that's the main way that we interact with our audiences. We try to stay active on the social media stuff, but you know, kids, our readers are not necessarily on social media. So
But
it's,
connecting with educators through social media helps too.
Yeah. and
just-
librarians and.
Yeah, the librarians and the educators, thank you.
I just want to say, how fascinated I was about your story about the termite.
Oh, yeah.
And I wondered whether you written anything about that. I've been to South Africa, so I've had my picture taken next to these, and I never appreciated the story that you told. I think
Ah. Well, so I do have a story that I was working on. I don't know if I'm gonna sell it. I've got 100 other stories in line that I want to try to work on, but there is a story that I'm working on called The Water Hole. And it's going to be a wordless picture book showing the formation of a water hole and all the animals that benefit from it. There is a documentary, a wonderful documentary. I think it's online somewhere. It's called The Termite and the Elephant, I think, which is exactly that information. Yeah, I mean, sometimes water holes can start from just a footprint.
Yeah, that's not the only way water holes start.
That's one of the main ways, but a water hole can start with just the footprint of an elephant, you know, and then the birds go and bathe themselves and make it a little bit bigger. And then the warthogs come in and start bathing themselves, and the mud sticks to them and they carry it away and the hole gets bigger. And then it's big enough for like baby rhinos and then big rhinos and then Cape buffalo. And pretty soon the elephants can come back and they start bathing in it, and they will carry away like a yard of mud every time they walk away from that watering hole, right? So the bigger it gets, the more water it will hold the next time it rains. And you were there, you know, when it rains, right?
That's amazing. So we have a couple of questions, I think, online.
The first one is real quick. It's when will the axolotl book be published?
We want to know.
Good
We want
question.
to know.
Do we know the exact date?
I
on that
don't
one?
think we have the exact date, but it's spring 2025.
Okay.
So I will,
I would say April 2025 is probably a good guess.
but we can ask our publisher and send it to you guys too.
So I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think maybe you guys have talked about coming back to us next summer when the book is available. Is that right? For Family
Yeah,
Science Night, maybe?
Yeah,
Actually,
with
I think
Island
it's spring.
in
Yeah,
the spring,
March,
we're gonna be
I
back,
believe.
yeah.
Oh, March. Great.
Right?
So we will let you know when it is available because, you know, James and Priya got their, 3 seconds of fame, but they have a little more, they have like a little more visibility for having that cameo in the axolotl book.
And then the other question is if you are familiar with Gerald Durrell. He's a British naturalist, conservation and author. And the quote that he has is, "You cannot begin to preserve any species of animal unless you preserve the habitat in which it dwells. Disturb or destroy that habitat and you will exterminate the species as surely as if you had shot it. So conservation means that you have to preserve forest and grassland, river and lake, even the sea itself. This is not only vital for the preservation of animal life generally, but for the future existence of man himself, a point that seems to escape many people."
Mm. Yeah,
Very,
absolutely
very
right.
astute. We agree.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a good note maybe to wrap things up on, but I just want to take a moment to thank you both because what a gift you've given all of us in this
Thank
work.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This has been wonderful.
Thank you all.
Thank you for, having us.
So you may know that it's July, which is always an interesting time on MDI, but we do have a whole series of events that are planned for later this month. Later this week, we had anticipated on having our Family Science Night, which is a wonderful way to kick off this week of outreach to little folks who are interested and curious. But I don't know if you've been watching the weather, but we are in for quite a storm on Thursday, looking like tropical force winds and 3 inches of rain and lots of flooding. So we may try to reschedule our outdoor family science night to July 16th. So we will be sending word of that that postponement around due to weather. But all of our other celebrations are here. I'm sure many of you who are receiving our e-news are have marked your calendars for every single event, and you're not going to miss one for the rest of the summer. But in any case, we also have we're going to take every 2 weeks, we have our Science Cafe. So we're going to take the week of July 24th off because that is our annual meeting week and homecoming week. We just have a super busy week then. So we'll be back for our Science Cafe in early August. And I think the topic then is on Alzheimer's disease. So essentially what actions you can take during sort of midlife to impact there you go, how middle-age behavior can affect Alzheimer's later. So one not to be missed, a totally different topic, right? Go ahead.
I want to clue into that.
Yeah, right. We all need to tune in. In any case, thank you all so much for being here. And thanks to our viewers who joined us online. This session is recorded and we will send you a link to that. And thank you again, John and Hayley, for the wonderful work that you're doing and sharing.
Thank
this
you
work.
for having us.